Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the great Vincent van Gogh. Go to screen share here. So Van Gogh, he was born in 1853, passed away at the age of 37 in 1890. Very short life. This is a comment from one of his art buddies, Emile Bernard. He's one of the later Impressionists, a great artist on his own. Is commenting about Van Gogh. He said he was a painter, that is all. And for those who came on the scene around 1890, he was the most expressive. Van Gogh, very expressive painter. Expression like we'd never seen before. So let's look at some of his work and his life. And we will say that Van Gogh, his catalog is approximately 2,100 works, drawings, a lot of that, but also 860 oil paintings, probably about 200 of those so done in the last 24 months of his life. Lots of self-portraits. Here he is in the flesh. And look at those eyes, how intense that man is. And there's two great books on Van Gogh that I highly recommend. The first is titled Dear Theo. The Dutch pronunciation Theo, and said I say Theo a lot. But anyway, Irving Stone, the book was put together in 1934. It comes from his letters. There's mainly letters from Vincent to his brother Theo, and then a few letters from Theo to Vincent. Theo, who died shortly after Vincent did, his widow put together all these letters and had them published first in 1914, and then Irving Stone, we'll talk a little bit more about him in his book later, but he put it together in this wonderful compilation of letters. They're just beautiful. You read it. I mean, what I knew about Van Gogh paled in comparison to what I learned by reading his letters. He was a very kind person, a very intelligent person, a very compassionate person. It was full of empathy, full of awareness, full of intelligence. He had a wisdom like he'd lived 100 years. He could speak 4 language fluency, quite a remarkable human being. The other book that came out in the early 90s, I believe, by Stephen Neffe and Gregory White Smith. They're both two highly educated art historians. Neffe paints and is a great painter on his own, but this is the complete story from birth to death of Van Gogh, and it's sanctioned by the museum in Amsterdam, if that's the right word, but they assisted him in a lot of his research. But if you want to know about Van Gogh, I don't know, it's somewhere 800 pages, something like that. It goes all the way through it. And unlike Dear Theo, which is full of these wonderful letters from Van Gogh and his brother, they're all heartwarming, happy, interesting letters. Well, Van Gogh had another side to him, as we've all kind of heard, and a little rough around the edges, to put it mildly. And some of those not so nice letters are in the Life book by Neffe and Smith, and paints a more complete picture. But both are great reads, great reads. And here's a picture of Brother Theo. And these are two portraits of Theo, and the museum in Amsterdam had originally said that they were self-portraits, but years later they changed their mind and said they were of Theo. But let's go through a timeline of his life, kind of from birth to death, and see if we can get a feel for who this man was. So he was born in Zunder. I'm not sure exactly where that is in relation to Amsterdam or The Hague, etc., but a smaller town. He was the oldest of 6, had 2 brothers, Theo being one of them, and 3 sisters. And his first job was at Gogh, a large art marketing firm of drawings and paintings. Famous artists of the past. They put together, prints of these artists, and the world being such as it is, the art wasn't hanging just in the church or at the king and queen's house. It began to, the rising middle class was coming, and people wanted images for their home. And Vincent's uncle, Cent, who was also named Vincent as well, the nickname was Cent. But anyway, he had some kind of art marketing business and he sold it to Goupil. Goupil had offices in Brussels, London, Paris, at The Hague. So they were the largest art dealer in the world at the time. And so they would sell these prints, but also, original paintings. And Theo ended up working for Goupil long after Vincent had left at an early age and became a rising star. There was a time where the Impressionist work was really starting to get popular among the people, and Theo was in charge of all the Impressionist work, and it had represented Monet at one time. But Vincent was let go after a couple of years. And as they say, it's like, they're not sure who was happier, him for being gone or the people that let him go. He was not a team player. He didn't play well with others, etc. But one of the big positives that came out of his time here was he discovered that being around all this wonderful art, he would look at an image and it would soothe him. It would calm him. And, he was a troubled soul from the day he was born. And he found early on that looking at famous paintings made him feel much better. His next attempt at getting into the real world was he went and taught at two boys' schools in London. He went to one and it didn't work out, and I think the school folded. And then whoever was running the school started another school a little bit closer to London, and it was 100 miles away. And Vincent walked 100 miles in 3 days, which is, I don't know, that he did a lot of walking in his life. And then the schools didn't work out. I don't think that lasted too long. And then he decided that he wanted to be a man of the cloth and be a minister. His father was a minister, so he grew up in that kind of household. And one of his first assignments was to go to this town named Bourriage that was on the border of Belgium and France, and it was a coal town. And there's a wonderful book written by Emile Zola, who we talked about with Cézanne, who was Cézanne's buddy, the wonderful French author Zola. One of his books is entitled Germinal, written in 1885, and it's about what life was like in a coal town. And it's, talk about bleak. It's more than bleak. It's just it opened my eyes how horrible it must have been back then. And after a couple of months, the minister that put Van Gogh down at Borinage had somebody come down and check on him, and they said they were just taken back by how dirty he was, unwashed, that he was basically looked like he was starving. And in a sense, he had become one of the people in this coal mining town. And, as I read it, it's Vincent thought, this is, a win-win. What a great opportunity. These people are so down and out, and I can bring them the good word, and I'll make their lives better, and that gives me purpose. Well, it gets there, and the things are so awful with these people. The last thing they need is a little bit of preaching. They need food. They need clean bodies. They need some kind of hope in their life, and this young 20-year-old minister is not going to get it. And then Vincent would study like crazy. They said he would translate the Bible in it's one of his four languages. Just like everything else he did, he went into it full speed. And but when it came time to taking theology exams, he just wouldn't do it, wouldn't study. So next step, art. And let's see, he's 27 years old, and he decides to be an artist. He enrolls in the kind of leading art school of the Netherlands at The Hague, their academy there. And after not too long, the teacher suggests that Vincent go to a class for the beginning 10-year-olds. So, again, he's not breaking through. And so he decides to hang out with his uncle, somehow related to his mother, like a second cousin, a great Dutch painter named Anton Mauve. Beautiful work. And so he's been at it 2 years, and he, sees that if Mob will kind of take him under his wing and mentor him, and that lasts for a little bit. But as I said, Vincent would walk into an artist studio, and within 5 minutes there'd be an argument would have erupted, and it would be Van Gogh who would be the one that started the rage, basically. But when it came time for Anton to tell Vincent, you need to go do something else or try to do this with somebody else, and Vincent, claimed, well, I'm an artist, and Moff said, well, yes, you're an artist, but you have a vicious character. So that's kind of this other side of Vincent that we're talking about. So his first really successful painting is 1885. He's 32 years old. And this is entitled the Potato Eaters. And, the critics would say, well, the proportion here is off here. He's disfiguring the form, and, it's inaccurate. The palette's horrible. It's just too dark. That's not what people want. And, it didn't go anywhere at any pace. And a couple of things here we'll talk about besides the images that Goupil soothing Van Gogh. Being around the peasant soothed Van Gogh. And, a couple of reasons why they had an incredible relationship with nature. And then there was this sense of even though they were outcast and, couldn't fit in with the world, like Vincent was experiencing, they still had this sense of dignity about them, this sense of, contentment at times about them. And I think Vincent resonated with that as anyone would, but he could see past that, that even though they were the second-class citizens, there was something wonderful about them. And he mentioned in one of his letters that they had the resignation of a cab horse, yet still noble. This poor horse that has been, delegated to just clomp up and down the streets, and no more pasture, no more wide open spaces. And but still, you look at the horse and you could tell that they still have their dignity. And I think that's what Vincent was referring to with the peasants. So let's see, in 86, he's in Paris. That's where Theo is, and having a successful career as an art dealer. And the atelier, there's an artist named Corman who's a pretty good artist among the Impressionist kind of painters. And he hosts people coming to his studio. They pitch in for a model. They compare notes. They all kind of get together as painters and see what goes. And after a few times at the atelier, Corman said to Van Gogh that, I think you're just a little too unskilled. You need to go figure it out someplace else instead of here. And this is where he met Toulouse-Lautrec and also Emile Bernard, the one we quoted at the beginning, who said, in 1890, Van Gogh was the most expressive. And another quote from Bernard as to how it was going for Vincent at the atelier. He would say Vincent would make 3 studies each session, getting bogged down in the impastos, constantly starting all over again on new canvases, painting the model from all sides, while the pathetic students who laughed at him behind his back took 8 days to make an idiotic copy of a foot. Well, here we have a case of Van Gogh kind of running into that academia, and how how off it was versus his wild man expressionism. And as we talked about Cézanne, the school was still important. No matter how wild and expressive you wanted to be, you needed to learn the fundamentals. But it was very difficult for Van Gogh, again, to be around others in any form or fashion. So in 1888, let's see, he's 35 years old. He moves to the south of France, to Arles. And he was very productive here. It's like during this time there, he was there for about a year and a half. There 200 of his 800 paintings. And there's really no conclusive reason why he left and went to Arles, but a couple of things. There was a woman named Gabrielle that he had met in Paris who had moved to Arles. And the other was that, you know, a lot of his letters, he mentions to Teo how, you know, how wonderful it would be to, you know, form an artist colony, that a couple of us would go someplace beautiful and paint every day, and people would come, you know, and seek out our work in this beautiful spot because we're painting beautiful paintings. And, you know, part of his initial plan, he wanted Lautrec to come down, he wanted Emile Bernard to come down, and he wanted Paul Gauguin. I'm not sure where he met Gauguin, but Gauguin, Lautrec, and Bernard were kind of his three art buddies. And anyway, so as I understand it, what happened was brother Teo, the art dealer, you know, talked to all three and said, you know, go down there and be with my brother. And but he got Gauguin to go down, and the story is that Vincent never knew it, but you know, Teo said, hey, Paul Gauguin, I'll start selling more of your paintings if you'll go down there and hang with Vincent. And he did for a couple of months. And from October to December of 88. And this is the house, this yellow small building here. This is where they lived. And this is Vincent's painting of the yellow house. And this is the house in the mid 1940s. It was bombed during the World War II. And I'm not sure what's there now. And in Arles, you know, again, in Van Gogh's letters, I mentioned, you know, how there's some just wonderful insights in there, and just, you know, uplifting and just, you know, some sweet words sometimes, and meaningful words. But I love this one. This is a painting he did of a dance hall in Arles. And he says it does one good to see people actually enjoying themselves. And, you know, I believe that. When you go out on the town, sometimes it just raises your spirit to be around other people, you know, out and about having a good time. So it's December 1888, and Van Gogh and Gauguin are in the Yellow House. And the story is they had a major argument that day. I think it's Christmas Eve. And there's also stories about Vincent. All his incidents, they always seem to happen around Christmas. And, you know, that goes back to some things that happened with his family, you know. But anyway, that's the day he cuts his ear off. And he goes and hands it to that woman, Gabrielle. There's other people, stories that says it was somebody else he handed the ear to, but that's the one I'll stick with for now. But anyway, you know, not a good day for Vincent. So in Arles, he has several attacks, like you know, whatever led him to cut off his ear. So in a couple of months later, you know, I think he's all in for it, but he goes to an institution of, you know, a health institution in Saint-Remy, which is not too far, 15, 20 miles outside of Arles. And he's there for almost a year. And he stays there about a year, and then he feels like he's cured. So he moves on up to Paris to be with Teo, and Teo has a new wife, Johanna. And, you know, it's just a little bit too crowded for the three of them. And so he goes off to Auvers, which is not too far outside of Paris. And he prolifically paints there as well in the few months that he was there. And he goes, one of the reasons he goes is there's Dr. Gogh there. And Dr. Gogh, we'll talk a little bit more about him in a minute. But 1890, final year of his life, he's in two significant shows. And one is in Brussels at a notable gallery, and his paintings hang alongside Cézanne, Lautrec, and Renoir. And, you know, Van Gogh top left, Cézanne top right, Lautrec bottom right, Renoir bottom left. And then he's also in another show in Paris, and Monet had commented that he thought Van Gogh's paintings were the best in show. So, you know, it's as many people that, you know, I was always on there, you know, it's like Van Gogh's work was never accepted anywhere by anybody, you know, until long after he died. Well, it looks like to me that in 1890, he was starting to have a little bit of success. And he did sell one painting. This is the one painting that was sold. It was sold for 400 francs. I don't know the story behind it, but 400 francs was no small change back in that time. I think kind of like a minimum wage would have been 100 francs a month. Vincent's pretty much regularly received an allowance from Teo for 150 francs a month, and you know, and barely got by. But in any case, that's like 4 or 5 months worth of a minimum wage salary, and let's call it 20,000 a day. It's several $1,000s in today's terms that he received for a painting. And if he would have been able to sell a few of these every month, the story might have been a little bit different. Who knows? But back to the episodes in St. Remy and Dr. Gachet or Gachet. But so he's in Arles, that he cuts the ear off in the latter part in December of '88, and he has 2 or 3 more episodes like that. He just I don't know about them in total detail, but in the sense he blacks out, he does some horrific behavior, harassing other people, just completely out of his head. And what's fascinating for me is if you read some of his letters, I mean, the letters are dated, and you can read a letter the day before the episodes happen. I mean, that the episodes are cataloged that this happened this day, this happened that day, and there is no clue at all that there's anything wrong with this guy. And anyway, it's sad, I guess you could say. So and this is a painting that here on the left of Dr. Ray. That's the doctor at the hospital in Arles. And I think they got along well. And when he went to St. Remy, I think he got along well with the doctor there. Again, an intelligent person could carry on an intelligent conversation, but his buttons got pushed pretty quickly and easily. And then in Alvarez with Dr. Gachet, Gachet was like known for the specialist of the creative mind, and the more you read about him, you kind of just feel like he was more or less sort of a witch doctor. And but Monet and Cezanne and Renoir had all gone to see Gachet and had received some kind of care and guidance from him. But it's really funny in one of Vince's letters after he's been there a week or not very long, and he writes to Theo and he says, "This guy's sicker than I am." So that's who we're dealing with, and I think Van Gogh had hopes that this man would make things better for him, and he gets there and this guy's sick, and Van Gogh's he's like, okay, whatever. It's sort of ironic and funny. And then the end of his life, there's several stories about this. Did he really commit suicide? So it's a day in July. He goes out to the field like he paints like any other day, and then they see him stumbling back in town hours later, and there is a gunshot wound in his stomach, and he dies a couple of days later. But also, so let me mention this sketch of this young person here on the right. That is René Secretan, and René Secretan and his brother or brothers. They're in Alvarez for the summer. I think their parents come from France or from Paris and vacation there in the summer. And he's out now just a bully. And so Van Gogh's this, unclean, unshaved, or just unkept person that, looks like he's starving. And he's an easy mark for a bully. And so, Secretane's favorite pastime is to see Vincent and go mess him up. And they said that he put salt in his coffee. He had once put a snake in his paint box. And Vincent would chew on the end of his brushes, and he said that Secretane noticed that one day and rubbed hot peppers on the end of the brushes. But where the story gets kind of interesting is that in 1888, Wild Buffalo Bill show comes to London. Then in '89, it comes to Paris, and Secretane had attended that show and was quite taken by Buffalo Bill. They said that he had the buckskin outfits and possibly even had a gun. And, that's kind of, they're saying maybe what happened was Secretane, approached Vincent while he was out painting. He had a gun, and then who knew what happened from there. In the Life, Van Gogh by Nafay and Smith, they have an appendix in the book that goes into this, and they don't make anything up. They just kind of lay out some of the facts that happen, and it's like you draw your own conclusions. And there was even a 60-minute segment about it, and you can Google that and watch the segment. It's quite interesting. But at this time too, that There was a letter written from, I think it was Gachet, back to Theo, and he said, he's drinking turpentine, he's eating paint again. So I know that he was eating paint, they say in Arles at times. And so, it's just something's really not right with this man, unfortunately. So he passes away July of 1890. And then sadly, 6 months later, in January of 1891, his brother Theo passes away. And Theo had recently had his first child and only child. And Theo had suffered from syphilis, severe bouts of syphilis all his life, had been hospitalized several times. And I don't know the cause of death, but he was in very ill health often, and that probably didn't help matters. And the one son that they had that was born in 1890 was, they named it after his brother Vincent. Theo and Johanna. And this was Vincent Willem van Gogh. And don't know a lot about him, but in the 1950s, when the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam got started, he was instrumental in that. And then we'll talk about his mother, how she was instrumental in promoting Vincent, her brother's work. And I'm assuming the way Vincent conducted his life, that he was an integral part to supporting his mother in that endeavor. So summing up this life, his struggle is constant. And, all of us, as we, gotten older, we tried this, we worked here, we worked there, sometimes we got let go, etc. But the way that Vincent was let go, the way these things ended, they are always somewhat in disaster in a sense. He would go into it full bore, and there would basically be some kind of wreck, that would happen. And his temperament was such that it was never a happy ending to these situations. As we pointed out, you have a vicious character. An argument would start wherever he went. And he was also dependent upon his brother Theo all his life for money. His letters are full of there's this hope. Okay, I'm going to paint 10 of these and 5 of those, and then I'm going to get with Gogh, and we're going to go here and we're going to sell them, and on and on. And finally, he says, finally, I can, sustain myself on my own. I don't have to rely on you anymore, Theo. And, this just went on and on and on. So that would have been difficult for him, of course. And then we have this Bernard Gogh and Lautrec. They would comment on his work. They were, not tremendously successful, but they were in the groove with the other artists. They were recognized as up and comers, and every now and then doing something pretty fantastic. And where was Van Gogh and his recognition, and his brother Theo being an art dealer? Why wasn't Vincent getting it done? And again, I've got a couple of explanations later that we'll say on that. But at the same time, it's like he's being told that, by his buddies that, you need to change. And Vincent was like, no, I think I'm doing it just fine. And we'll look into that in a minute. So his mind is troubled since the beginning. He's desperate for company. He can't get intimate with anyone. It's just, there's this something about him that puts people off. And, but I want to say, you read his letters, and he's humble about it. He's very honest about it. And he never makes excuses, it seems like, and it troubles him. And, he kind of holds a lot of that in. But you can tell there's this sense he'd like to make it right. He'd like to make it better. He doesn't like where he is with that kind of behavior. And, like when he was in Borinage, and they said he looked starved and unwashed, and he would live in sheds, with holes in the roofs and the walls. He would just, on a whim, just take, endless walks all day long in the cold rain, bread and coffee. That was his meal. He didn't have any money ever. And, it's like those poor peasants that lived in Borinage and worked in the coal mine. He had a sense that, I need to live as desperately as they do until I can do something that the world likes, or, that I need to have something that tells me I belong. And he would whip himself on the back, that self-flagellation. But as far as, okay, so how did he cope here? What I admire this, that he tried many ways to make this right. And again, seeing that image that he saw at Goupil, that made him feel good. Being around the peasants, and it's like it's a kindred spirit. Hey, they're having a rough go of life, just like me, but there's still this sense of dignity about them that I can just see. And then, they're in nature all day long, and I like being out in nature. So I want to be more like them. They look like they're content. So let's go outside and paint. But he also loved painting portraits. He said, one can paint all of humanity by the simple means of a portrait. It gives me a sense of infinity. And, as much as he put people off on first impression, very difficult for him to get a model. And, his limited means, very difficult for him to pay for somebody. But he desperately searched, it's like all day, every day to get somebody to sit that he could paint. And that was a way for him to get intimacy. So we have the images at Goupil. We have the peasants that help. We have being in nature that helps. And we have the act of painting that helps. And people. It does one good to see people actually enjoy themselves. And another way of comfort that came to Vincent is so he's at Saint Remy, the sanitarium, or the health spa, I guess you could say. And I don't have exactly from the letters, but there's paraphrasing that he notices that there are other people that are sick just like him. And that's a revelation to him, and it makes him feel not so alone. He's like, oh, okay, I'm sick too. He said, I thought I was crazy in a sense. And there's the authors, Nafay and Smith, they say the great weight of ambition and expectation had been lifted. So he's desperate to make his mark, and it's otherwise he's going to starve. And this is a quote from one of his letters: "We don't have to live for any great ideas anymore, for only small ones." So it's like the cab horse in a sense. He has this sense of resignation about him. And I don't have enough info to say it's direct correlation, but he does paint prolifically. Maybe he's more at ease with himself. And, he produces some of his best work ever in these next 2 years. And then he says, too, in a letter, once you know what it is, you can do something to prevent your being taken unaware by the anguish of terror. So that I read as, these episodes come upon him. And it's like you read the letter the day before, it's like everything's fine. Then all of a sudden, from out of the blue, something comes and just completely takes him down. And so, he's hopeful there. It's like, okay, I'm here and I'm being under the care of a doctor, and we're talking about ways to, handle all this. And he thinks he has a handle on it, that, he can stop these things before they happen. Well, that ended up not really working out too well. So let's look at a few of his iconic, images that, if you say Van Gogh, this is kind of what comes to mind. This is the bedroom in the house, the yellow house in Arles. Of course, the Starry Night, irises, sunflowers, potato eaters. And then as far as Van Gogh's popularity, so it really takes off in the United States in the mid 1930s, in the height of the Depression. And I'll talk about it here at the end. It's like, why? Why all of a sudden now? And some things that lead up to that are the widow Johanna. She compiles there's 600 letters from Vincent to Theo and 40 letters from Theo to Vincent. They begin in 1872, long before he became an artist. And she compiles these letters in 1914. And I don't know the whole story, but it was a popular read. And then in the 1930s, the author Irving Stone, who also wrote the book The Agony and the Ecstasy, which is about Michelangelo, he wrote this book, Lust for Life. Well, he uses the letters to create this fictional story about Van Gogh. And I have not read it. I don't really want to read a fictional story using those letters. Reading the letters and, just reading Wikipedia about Van Gogh is plenty. it's a much more entertaining to me than this book. But I haven't given it a chance, so I really shouldn't downplay it. But uh, in conjunction with this book in 1934, and it was immediately popular, the Museum of Modern Art in New York puts on a Van Gogh exhibit. And it 1934, 1935, I believe it ran to 1936. But it started out in New York. It went to Boston, went to Philadelphia, went to San Francisco, among other places. And over 1 million people in like a year, 18-month time frame saw Van Gogh's work. And as museums go at that time of the century, that meant that there's just something about this guy that the people really like. And this is a little bit off topic, but from a line from the Agony and the Ecstasy, it says, "Love takes us in strange ways. It is the language of the blood. It's neither cold nor indifferent. It's either agony or ecstasy." And Van Gogh's life had a lot of agony and not too much ecstasy. But we'll talk later about why that's why was he so popular in the United States in the 1930s. And then the book Lust for Life, they took the title from that, and there was a movie about Van Gogh, and that came out in the early 50s, 1950s with Kirk Douglas. I've tried to watch a little bit of it, and I don't know, it doesn't do much for me. I think the book's better than the movie here, but not Lust for Life book, the real Van Gogh book of life. And then think about the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. I believe it was begun in the 1950s, but still very popular today. I think 2 million people have been the kind of the average visitors per year over the last decade. And it's a huge building, several stories. It's huge, beautiful ground, several acres. And just think about if Vincent woke up today and went and took a look and said, "Hey, what's going on here?" Well, it's all your work. And I think he'd just turn around and go back down in the earth. I don't know. That's kind of funny that talk about agony and ecstasy. So let's take a break here, and then we'll come back. We'll go through some of his work and just talk about the way his art impacted the world of art. All right. Thank you very much.